The prisoner, known only by a chilling alias, was once a figure whose name struck fear into the hearts of both law enforcement and criminals alike. His past was marked by a series of ruthless, calculated crimes that showcased his uncanny ability to outsmart and outmaneuver those who tried to stop him. His reputation as a mastermind criminal began to spread long before he ever stepped foot in the prison system. Born into a turbulent, violent world, the prisoner was no stranger to hardship. From a young age, he displayed an unnatural ability to adapt to the harshness around him. Growing up in a rough neighborhood, he quickly learned that survival depended on intelligence, strength, and the ability to dominate others. As he moved through adolescence, he became involved in petty crimes, but his ambition and cunning set him apart from others in his circle. It wasn't long before he graduated to more serious offenses: robberies, extortions, and eventually, high-profile heists. His rise in the criminal underworld was swift and methodical. The combination of his sharp intellect and cold ruthlessness allowed him to navigate the dangerous world of organized crime without leaving a trail. He didn't rely on violence alone. He was a master of manipulation, always staying 2 steps ahead of both the police and his rivals. His charisma played a key role in his success. He had the rare ability to inspire loyalty in others, convincing people to follow him without question, even in the most dangerous and high-stakes operations. What made him particularly feared was his lack of remorse. He was a predator who saw people as mere pawns in a larger game, calculating every move with precision. His ruthlessness was legendary. Those who crossed him often ended up in tragic, irreversible situations. Yet, it wasn't just his ability to plan and execute his crimes that made him stand out. It was his eerie calm under pressure. In the heat of a robbery or escape attempt, while others panicked or faltered, he remained cold and calculating, always thinking ahead. Word of his deeds spread, and soon the criminal world knew him as someone to be both feared and respected. He became a figure of mystery, his face rarely seen, his name rarely spoken aloud. Law enforcement agencies had him on their radar for years, but his ability to evade capture was uncanny. He moved like a shadow, leaving no evidence, no witnesses, and no remorse. In the underworld, his intelligence was his greatest asset. He never relied on brute force to get what he wanted. Instead, he used strategy, persuasion, and the ability to manipulate people into doing his bidding. Whether it was creating chaos within rival organizations or using the media to turn public opinion in his favor, the prisoner was a master of control. His charisma allowed him to sway people to his cause, whether it was a street-level gang member or a high-ranking official in the criminal enterprise. He became a symbol of power, not just because of his violent actions, but because of his ability to orchestrate complex criminal operations. From the shadows before his arrest, he was already considered one of the most dangerous and influential figures in the criminal underworld, a name that even the most hardened criminals whispered in awe. His intelligence, ruthlessness, and charm had secured his place at the top, and it seemed inevitable that he would one day reach the pinnacle of power. Even the most hardened criminals whispered in awe. His intelligence, ruthlessness, and charm had secured his place at the top, and it seemed inevitable that he would one day reach the pinnacle of power, even behind bars. When the prisoner was finally apprehended, the authorities couldn't have known the depth of the challenge they had just presented the prison system. Unlike most inmates who entered with visible fear or submission, he entered the facility with an air of quiet confidence. For him, the prison wasn't a place of defeat. It was simply another arena where power had to be earned, just like every other place he had conquered in the outside world. The prison environment was a microcosm of the outside world, a place where the strong preyed on the weak, and survival depended on a mix of brutality, intimidation, and strategic alliances. The walls, high and imposing, separated a chaotic world from the society outside, but within them, a brutal social order existed. Prisoners quickly learned that their worth was determined by their ability to dominate, manipulate, and control. Violence was currency, and loyalty was often bought with fear. Here, power was not a privilege granted to anyone. It was something that had to be seized and maintained. As soon as the prisoner stepped into the grim, overcrowded facility, he immediately began assessing the dynamics of the place. Unlike the majority of newcomers who were overwhelmed by the grim surroundings and the violent atmosphere, he saw opportunity. The old guard, prisoners who had been inside for years, ruled through physical strength, intimidating their fellow inmates and asserting dominance over the day-to-day operations. They controlled the smuggling of contraband, set the unwritten rules, and had the most influence over the guards and administration. To challenge them meant to invite certain retaliation, but to play by their rules meant submission. The prisoner was different from the others. His first day was marked by a series of subtle observations as he carefully analyzed the structure of the prison's power. He understood that physical strength alone wouldn't win him control in this place. It was about outsmarting the established rulers, undermining their power, and finding cracks in the system. His intelligence, instead of brute force, would be the key to breaking the prison's power hierarchy. However, this didn't mean that he avoided conflict altogether. His reputation preceded him, and it didn't take long for the dominant inmates to take notice. The first encounter came quickly, a confrontation with one of the more established and feared figures in the yard. This inmate, known for his sheer size and violent tendencies, immediately saw the newcomer as a threat. The prisoner, however, remained calm and unfazed. Instead of engaging in a physical altercation, he played the situation with subtlety, using words to provoke and manipulate, turning the larger man's insecurities into his weakness. The altercation was brief, but the message was clear. This new inmate wasn't someone to be taken lightly. The encounter didn't result in a physical fight, but it had a lasting impact. It sent a signal through the prison that the newcomer was not only capable of standing his ground, but was also clever enough to challenge authority without violence. The old prison guard, whose power was derived from the threat of brute force, suddenly saw that their rule was threatened by something far more dangerous, an inmate who could use his mind to unravel their dominance. This early clash set the stage for a series of struggles that would come as the prisoner moved deeper into the prison's political web. Though it took time, the prisoner soon became aware that earning respect in prison didn't happen overnight. He would need to navigate alliances, carefully avoid the traps set by the established leaders, and, at times, engage in violence when absolutely necessary. But his greatest strength lay in his ability to make others do his bidding without lifting a finger. The power dynamics of the prison had started to shift the moment he arrived, though no one knew it yet. The king of the prison had just walked through its gates. As the prisoner's influence grew, so did the number of individuals who saw him as a threat to their own power. In a place as volatile as prison, challenges to authority were inevitable, and the prisoner was no exception. Rival gangs, entrenched leaders, and even corrupt officials began to sense his rising influence and feared the shifting balance of power. But the prisoner, ever the strategist, was prepared for these challenges. He knew that maintaining power was as much about overcoming threats as it was about gaining influence. The first major challenge came from a rival gang leader, known for his brutal methods and control over the prison's underground economy. This leader, who had ruled the prison for years, viewed the prisoner's rising power with suspicion and envy. In his mind, there could only be one king of the prison, and it was clear that the prisoner was moving too quickly to claim that title. The gang leader decided to confront the prisoner directly, attempting to intimidate him in front of a group of inmates. The confrontation was brutal, at first. The gang leader, a hulking figure known for his violent nature, tried to challenge the prisoner physically. But the prisoner had already calculated this move. He had spent weeks building alliances within the gang, subtly turning key members against their leader. As the gang leader attempted to overpower him in the yard, the prisoner calmly ducked the assault and used the chaos to his advantage. He signaled his loyal allies, who moved swiftly to disarm the gang leader's supporters and put pressure on him from all sides. In an instant, the once feared gang leader found himself isolated, his own people backing away from him. The prisoner had not only avoided a bloody battle, but had used the very same tactics of psychological manipulation and strategy to defeat his opponent without firing a shot. This defeat sent shockwaves through the prison. The prisoner had shown that he was not just a survivor, he was a master of the prison's intricate social structure. While the former leader was now nothing more than a shadow of his former self, the prisoner stood tall, having solidified his position as the most powerful force inside the walls. However, the prisoner's power was still not absolute. There was a deeper challenge he would have to face, one that came from within the prison's corrupt administration. A senior officer, known for his greed and brutal approach to maintaining control, saw the prisoner's rise as a threat to his own influence. The officer had long been accustomed to taking bribes and running the prison with an iron fist, and he viewed the prisoner's growing influence as an unwanted disruption. In a series of clandestine meetings, the officer began to push back, ordering more aggressive searches of the prisoner's cell, attempting to plant contraband to frame him, and even threatening his allies. But the prisoner was no stranger to such tactics. He knew that to confront this officer directly would only bring unwanted attention, so he carefully orchestrated a series of events that would turn the officer's own underlings against him. Using his network of informants and well-placed favors, the prisoner gathered incriminating evidence of the officer's illegal activities, which included bribery and smuggling. He subtly fed this information to the higher-ups in the prison administration, creating a web of corruption that was difficult to ignore. Within weeks, the officer was investigated, his crimes exposed, and his influence completely dismantled. Once again, the prisoner had used his intellect to defeat a much stronger adversary without resorting to violence. These challenges were just the beginning, but they proved one crucial point. The prisoner was not only a force to be feared, but also one who could navigate and dominate the complex web of rivalries, corrupt officials, and power struggles within the prison. Each time he was challenged, he didn't react impulsively. Instead, he used his intellect, his understanding of human nature, and his control over the prison's resources to solidify his rule and ensure that no one could dethrone him. By the time the final challenge came, a brutal, last-ditch attempt to wrest control from him, the prisoner had already proven that he was not just a king of the prison, but a ruler whose dominance was unshakable. His intellect, manipulation, and ability to turn every challenge into an opportunity for greater control had transformed the prison from a place of chaos into his kingdom. The prisoner's journey to undisputed control of the prison culminated in a single, pivotal moment. A brutal, bloody confrontation that would seal his place as the absolute ruler of the facility. Over the years, he had slowly and methodically dismantled rival gangs, manipulated corrupt prison guards, and exploited the weaknesses within the prison's administration. But despite his growing influence, there was always one last obstacle standing in his way: the warden. The warden, a career prison officer with decades of experience, had become a formidable force in his own right. He maintained strict control over the facility through fear and discipline, relying on a mix of harsh punishments and occasional bribery to keep the inmates in check. While the prisoner had become a force to be reckoned with, the warden remained the final authority, untouchable and seemingly beyond the reach of even the most powerful prisoners. But, as with everyone who stood in his way, the prisoner understood that the warden's power was only as strong as the system that upheld it. The final confrontation began when the prisoner discovered a vulnerability in the warden's authority. Through his informants and his vast network of allies, he learned that the warden was involved in an illegal scheme, selling favors and protections to the highest bidder. This opened a door of opportunity. The prisoner knew that the warden's power was built on a shaky foundation of corruption and fear, and it was only a matter of time before someone would exploit it. The prisoner decided that the time had come to make his move. He carefully coordinated a prison-wide rebellion, orchestrating it from behind the scenes. Using his control over the underground economy, he secured weapons and mobilized key allies from every gang and faction inside the prison. On the day of the rebellion, the prisoner's followers struck in unison, overwhelming the guards who had been loyal to the warden. The chaos was swift and violent, with the prisoners taking control of the entire facility in a matter of hours. In the midst of the turmoil, the prisoner confronted the warden directly. The warden, shocked by the scale of the uprising and the betrayal from within his own ranks, tried to maintain control through sheer force. But the prisoner was already several steps ahead. He had anticipated the warden's every move, playing on his ego and sense of invincibility. In a final, brutal showdown, the prisoner outmaneuvered the warden, using his own men to turn the tide. The warden, once the undisputed ruler of the prison, was arrested and thrown into solitary confinement by the very people who had once served him. With the warden's fall, the prisoner's rise to power was complete. He was no longer just a kingpin in the prison's criminal network. He was the ruler of the entire facility, a position he held with absolute authority. His reign changed the structure and operations of the prison in ways that would be felt for years to come. Under his rule, the prison became a different place. The rigid hierarchy that once defined the prison's social order was replaced by a more fluid, yet equally brutal system. The prisoner instituted his own version of justice, one that was based not on the arbitrary whims of corrupt officials, but on a strict code of loyalty and efficiency. Rival factions were unified under his banner, and the underground economy flourished like never before. His influence over the guards and prison administration grew, with many officers either bending to his will or being replaced by those loyal to him. The prisoner's legacy within the prison was one of fear and respect. He was a figure who had transcended the role of a mere inmate. He had become the embodiment of power in the most unforgiving place on earth. His mind, his ability to manipulate others, and his unrelenting drive to dominate every aspect of the prison system made him an almost mythical figure. Those who served under him respected him not just for his strength, but for his intelligence and strategic brilliance. His rule was a well-oiled machine, a system of control that was both ruthless and efficient. What made him so dangerous was not just his ability to conquer, but his understanding of human nature. He knew how to manipulate the weaknesses of those around him, whether it was the corrupt officers, the gang leaders, or the other inmates. He understood that true power didn't come from physical strength alone. It came from control over minds, loyalties, and resources. He had turned the prison into his kingdom, and no one, not even the most hardened criminals or officials, could challenge his reign. In the end, the prisoner's rise to power was a testament to his unparalleled intellect and ruthlessness. He had become the undisputed king of the prison, and his legacy was one of terror, control, and strategic brilliance.